we'll see that in future weeks. But I want to talk a little bit about the words that God uses here at the very end of our lesson today. That Joshua is told 2 words, and I want to break these down for us. He is told to be strong and courageous. Be strong and courageous. Now, this I love because this is exactly what Joshua needed. Don't you see it? That he knew he felt weak. So the only way, whenever we feel weak, is to call to the one who is strong. We saw in our last series that our joy doesn't come from anything we've mustered up. It's his joy that we get, and our joy will overflow in John 15. That's the same type of thing that's happening here. Your weakness is God's greatest strength. Did you hear me? Your weakness is God's greatest strength. Quit saying you can't when God's telling you can. I've let the enemy do it so many times to me and says, Alex, you can't do it. You know what I love saying in those moments? I know I can't, but he can. You can't get out of debt. You can't possibly succeed as a pastor. You can't possibly be a preacher. Remember what they used to say about you back in the day? Remember what people used to tell you? Many of you, you've come from a background similar to mine where the fact that you're still walking and breathing is a miracle. But what got me through those moments is not on my own will. It's because God's strength. God is stronger than anything you will face. And until we see this in real life, until we see it and feel it, we're going to continually deal with the challenge. We're not going to be calmed. And I love the way that God reiterates what he says. He says, I'm going to give you what I promised Moses. This is an amazing thing. I'm going to give you your parents' 401k. I'm going to give you your inheritance. It's going to be amazing. You're going to get the house. It's going to be paid for. Your life is going to be great. You're going to the promised land. You're going to Hawaii. I don't know where your hotspot destination is, but wherever you want to be, that's what God just promised Joshua. But isn't it awesome, and isn't it also difficult when you get told what you're promised, but yet you let the pressures of men stop you? You start to say, what if I fail, though? What if I don't make it? You know, even Moses, the one that came before Joshua, said the exact same words. I'm not fit to do this. I can just imagine Moses' prayer whenever he was first called was, God, I'm scared I can't do this by myself. But I need you. And that put a smile on God's face. Many of us, I think we look at it differently. And I think, let me bring up some things here, but I think me and you, we look at these situations and we think, God can't use doubt. We talk about faith, don't we? Some say, well, the opposite of doubt is faith. Some say the opposite of faith is doubt. Let me explain something to you here. God can use your doubt. You hear me? God can use your doubt. You might say, well, are you talking about doubting God in general or doubting what he can do through you? Both. See, I don't know how many times I've met followers of Christ that have never met Jesus. They have put on the church clothes, learned some Hebrew or Greek or Aramaic, and can say some funny words, agape. They can say Golgotha, or Eli, Eli, sabachthani. Father, why have you forsaken me? We can learn these fancy words, can't we? But many times we're not seeing what Joshua sees in these moments. He is having a real encounter. Joshua had doubts. Moses had doubts. Abraham had doubts. Jacob had doubts. Adam had doubts. Eve had doubts. Esther had doubts. David had doubts. Solomon had doubts. Thomas definitely had doubt. And I bring it up because I think many of us were paralyzed because we think doubt can't be used. And let me say it this way. In Craig Rochelle, in his book Divine Direction, it was a great book. I encourage you to read it if you would like. I can let you borrow it. I have a few people that want to borrow it. But he says in his book this, and I think this is amazing that you and I need to hear Because today you need to feel calmed. I really do. I feel like many of us, we're at a point in our year where we have started strong, but now we're getting scared because we don't think we can make it. Maybe you've set a goal, or maybe you've set out, oh, this year's going to be different. And you're being challenged in a way where you feel like it's about to be done. You're about to give up. You're about to give up on your marriage. You're about to give up on paying off your bills. You're about to give up on trying to get out of the things that you know you put yourself in. Many of us are right there. And this is what Craig Rochelle says, and I love the way he puts it. Pastor Craig says, some people say if you doubt, you don't have faith. He says, but I say quite the opposite is true. You may not have strong faith unless you've gone through some honest doubts. Doubt is just a challenge. Hear me. Doubt is just a challenge. Other words, what Craig is saying to us today is that you can't trust something you haven't first doubted. You have to overcome the doubt before you can trust it. I know this. Following Jesus is the craziest decision you could ever make. And for those of you who are thinking about it, saying, I'm really going to give Jesus a try. I've been faking it up to this point, but I think I'm really going to try. Hear me. You will have doubts. Just because you have doubts doesn't mean that God's given up on you. And it does not mean, hear me, quote me on this, doesn't mean that you've given up on Him. Doubt is real. I would be lying to tell you that it's not real. There is a deeper battle going on. In the unseen world, we know, Scripture tells us, doubt is normal, guys. What you're going through right now is completely normal. The enemy can begin to get you to think that it's not, and that something's wrong with you, or maybe you were never serious about following Jesus, but all of a sudden, you start to think that your faith is not real. We can begin to think we don't have what God is looking for. We go and we interview at church. We interview for God, right? Just imagine what we really do in church. I know this happens all the time. You can tell me I'm lying, but I know I'm not. We walk into church and we have our resume with us. We're looking good. We're feeling good, right? We have people praying for us. Feels good. We're going into a job interview to meet with Jesus. And we sit there and he doesn't ask the questions we were prepared for, right? Remember those interviews that catch you off guard? I know some of you have been to some interviews like me recently. What's your greatest weakness?
I don't like bacon. I don't know. That's a big weakness. I don't know.
And we're not ready for the questions that God has for us, because the questions that God is giving us today is not, oh, I want to help you. He says, I want to be your helper. You came to me today. The questions that God asks you today is not, are you strong enough to keep going? But He's asking you, are you weak enough to let me take over? Are you willing to let me be the strength? Are you willing to let me take over, or are you going to continue to try to drive? I don't know how many times I've been in a car with my wife and I've said something stupid or I say something that's kind of offline a little bit, and the reaction is usually to punch the driver, right? For some reason, it's like, hey, he's driving a car, let's punch him in the face. That won't cause the car to crash. These are the kinds of moments that we walk into a situation and we're going, what just happened? This can sometimes be like church. You walk into church and you go, what just even happened? I was worried about this, and I was worried about, and man, I argued on the way here, and now we're here, and now I got to figure this whole Christian thing out and put on a Christian smile. That way I don't cause attention to myself or draw attention to myself. These are exactly the moments that God is preparing for us to remind you and I of who He is. When humans fail, guess what? God's just saying, hey, remember me? Remember when I said that in this world you will have troubles? But what? But take heart. I love that Joshua is given words that are synonymous with the words of Jesus. Let me share this with you, and we'll be closing on this fact right here. Many times, we talked about doubt. We can hear the words of Jesus, right? We can hear, well, God's going to use me and do great things through me. And all of a sudden, we can be like Joshua when we're just about to start, And we can remember the promises of God, but all of a sudden we realize, wait, why did he say be strong? Why did he say be courageous? Because he knew what was soon coming. That you're going to get to a point where you can't make it anymore by yourself. You're going to get to a point where you are discouraged. Trust me, ask any leader. It doesn't even matter, a church leader. Ask any leader anywhere. Discouraged is coming. Guarantee it. It's part of leadership. Maybe you're a husband or a wife. Maybe you're a brother or sister. You can never tell what someone else is going to do, can you? Discouragements come and they go. But what I love is what Jesus says, and it's amazing that he says it in John 16, is what he says this. He says that take heart, for I have overcome the world. But the word take heart, in other words, is synonymous with be strong and be confident and be courageous. These are all words that have the same meaning in the biblical text. So in other words, this is Jesus many years earlier saying, take heart, Joshua, for I have overcome the world. I know you're in the world, but Jesus is saying, I've overcome it. I think for those of you that are kind of like me, sometimes we just need to realize that Jesus already overcame what we're trying to get over. Many of us, I think, we're riding on a hill, looking up, not knowing what's on the other side. That's what following Jesus is like, isn't it? I mean, if we could be honest, even Psalms tells us, we look to the hills. Where does my hope come from? My hope comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. I mean, we can see that it looks Christian-like. Yep, Alex said that faith is like a roller coaster. That's about right. But what do you do when you're buckled in? What happens when it gets bumpy? What happens when your doubt seems to be the only thing you can think about? You're worried about selling your house, or you're worried about the future, whatever you're worried about. All of a sudden, God is saying, don't forget what I said. I know what the enemy said. I know what he's up to. Listen, God is not unaware of the works of the enemy. He's not unaware. Hear me on that. God has overcome the world. Okay? Amen. That means he's overcome the enemy. We've already read the end. Many of us, we know many, many followers of Christ that have fought the good fight and heard the words, well done, my good and faithful servant. We've met people that have met Jesus. Think about that for a moment. You've met someone, you've walked with someone, you've talked with someone that has followed this thing all the way through until their life on earth ends and have heard those words. And here today we stand looking at Jesus saying, I don't know if I can make it. These are small things. I know they're big, and I know they're hard, and I know they're challenging, but your doubts, your worries, they're all set up. They're all set up. You know, I've heard it said that, and I think I've used this a while back, that your greatest comeback is after you've been set up. You know, many of us, it's a setup here, right? We thought we wanted to take this worry to God and be infilled with God and feel really, really good when we leave this place. But instead of coming to church and feeling great, we leave challenged. This is how God works. The challenge that he's working through you, he first has to get it to you. And these are the words that he gives Joshua. He gives him words that literally speak to him today. God doesn't have a code language. He doesn't have any special words that he's going to use to get you to see he's real and that he wants to use you. One last quote, and I'll close on the quote here. The author of this book, the one that inspired me for this series, is, once again, his name is Brian McLaren. He says, I've wondered what God sees whenever my prayers feel weak and they feel desperate. And he quotes it in such a way that I just want to share it with you. He says, but I wonder what God sees in those moments when our prayers seem to be weak, desperate, and pitiful. He says that I wonder from God's perspective if they aren't really the expressions of the greatest faith of all. The times where you feel like you're the most weakest. What does God see? And he says, I think God sometimes sees us that those are just the expressions of great faith. that you and I are like a person hanging over a cliff, holding on to a saving hand, who reaches a point of saying, I can't hold on anymore. I am trusting you to hold me. It's your grip on me, not my grip on you, that will rescue me. It's all up to you. And I'll just close on that. I don't think there's any more words that need to be spoken. I think God has told us what he needs to today. I think many of us, we need to be calm today. You're worried. I know. Trust me, I can see it on your faces. You're wanting to know about your finances, your future, your marriage, your cars, your houses. I know it. I see it. I've walked this earth a few years to have some doubts on my own, to have some worries on my own. But let me be real with you. There is one thing that's never changed. There's not one time in my life have I walked this path and thought God has left me. It can be hard sometimes, absolutely. Those are refining moments, is how I look at them. You know, I had a conversation with a man the other day, and we started talking, and we started thinking, why does God have us in these situations? Why does God have me in this situation? What good could possibly come out of this? Instead of asking ourselves why we're in the season, but maybe it's what God's wanting to do in the season. You're so worried about the why. Why is God calling me? Why does he want to use me? Why does he think that he can do? Why? But ultimately what God's doing, he says that I want to work in you. I want to use you. You say, well, I can't do it. He says, I know, I can. Let me work through you. These are what made the greatest disciples of all. They walked hand in hand with Jesus day in and day out. And still, it's post-Easter, right? We have the Easter hangover. We're still feeling good from Easter. But their words haven't changed. Jesus' words to the disciples were the same words that were spoken to Joshua. Be strong and courageous. Don't give up. I'm going to call you to do some pretty cool things. You may say, I'm too old for that stuff. I don't have time for that. My schedule is way too busy. Those are all small things to God. Listen, God has you in your season. He's working in your season too. God doesn't put you somewhere he's not working. Let me say that again. God's not going to put you somewhere he's not working. You are a follower and a child of the Most High. You think he's forgotten about you? You think he's given up on you, haven't you? You think that he's done. That he's done the most work that he's done in your life. There's no more greater faith that's to come in your life. I'm here to tell you that's not true. I'm here to tell you that a 25-year-old, been married a few years, tried to build a career, still working on it. I am the most scared I've ever been in my life. But I have the most faith because I am truly reliant on God. And you know how I know that? You want to know how I really know God's real? Because you're here. There's only been a few things that I've been confident of, and I promise I'd be done. But I want to share one last story. My mom, when she was in prison, she called me one day, and I could only have a conversation for 15 minutes. Me and my mother, we'd only talk 15 minutes at most. Actually, probably 14 because of all the people that would say, you have 1 minute left. But my mom said, you know, Alex, I had a dream the other night. And I was about 14 years old when she said this. She said, I had a dream the other night that God told me you were going to be a preacher. And I said, oh, really? She said, yeah, you're going to be just like your great-grandfather. I said, well, that's going to be a problem because that's not in my plan. And I remember thinking that for 3-4 years until finally I was at youth camp one night. I was there for a girl, and I was not in the right spot, but you know what? Where God had me, where God put me in that moment, was the setup that he had from the very beginning. He goes, guess what, kid? It's not in your plan, but it's in mine. It's going to be what you don't see coming. That's God's going to do the greatest work in you. What you don't see coming is going to be the greatest work God does in you. God loves surprising us. In a good way. I know some of us, we get scared and we get surprised. It's in a good way. God wants to use your location for his promise. He wants to use your location for his promise. I don't care where you're at, what you feel. Take one thing away from me today. Is that God has you where you're at because he's going to do the greatest work in us today.